My son kicked me out of his own wedding 3 months ago, said I was embarrassing the family in front of 200 guests. The humiliation nearly killed me, but at midnight last Tuesday, that same son stood on my doorstep, desperate, sweating, begging me to sign papers that would hand over everything I've worked for my entire life. Dad, please, just sign these for the family. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who threw me out like garbage now needed my signature more than his next breath. His hands were shaking as he held out the documents. Behind him, his car engine was running like he was planning a quick getaway. I should have slammed the door in his face, should have made him feel the same humiliation he put me through in front of all those people. Instead, I invited him in, because what I discovered about my son over the next 30 days would expose a betrayal so deep, so calculated, that it makes getting kicked out of a wedding look like a minor disagreement. Some family secrets are worth a lifetime of silence. Others demand justice. This is the story of how I got mine. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, you need to hear what happened next. And if you think family loyalty means letting people walk all over you, I'm about to change your mind forever. My name is Lawrence Golding. I'm 65 years old, and until 4 years ago, I was married to the love of my life for 38 years. Margaret and I built precision electronics from nothing in our garage back in 1983. By the time I sold the business in 2019, we had 42 employees and contracts with 3 major aerospace companies. Margaret died suddenly of a heart attack in early 2021. Losing her felt like losing half of myself, like someone had torn away part of my foundation. But I still had our 2 sons to think about. Joel, our younger boy, and Daniel, who was 3 years older and had always been the responsible one. Daniel had become a paramedic, inspired by a desire to help people in their worst moments. He married a wonderful woman named Lisa, a nurse he met during an emergency room rotation, and they had Nina in 2008. Their marriage was the kind Margaret and I had always hoped our sons would find, built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. Joel took a different path. He studied computer science at Cal State Riverside, but never quite found his footing in the professional world. He worked various IT jobs, never staying anywhere more than 2 years. Not because he wasn't capable, Joel was brilliant with computers, but because he seemed to get restless whenever things became routine. When Daniel and Lisa were killed in a car accident in 2019, it shattered all of us. They were driving home from a weekend camping trip when a drunk driver ran a red light at 60 miles per hour. Nina was staying with us that weekend, which probably saved her life. The tragedy hit Nina hardest of all. She was only 11 years old, suddenly an orphan, trying to understand why the 2 people who loved her most in the world were simply gone. The life insurance settlement created a trust fund of $580,000 specifically for Nina's education and care until she turned 18. As the family patriarch and the person with the most stable finances, I became the primary trustee. Joel was granted limited emergency access, something we thought made sense given his computer background and the fact that Nina would sometimes need things when I wasn't immediately available. We live in Riverside County, California, about 90 minutes east of Los Angeles when traffic cooperates. It's a quieter corner of Southern California, the kind of place where neighbors still wave to each other and people leave their garage doors open while they work on weekend projects. My house sits on 2 acres that Daniel and I cleared together when he was in high school. We spent 3 summers removing rocks, leveling ground, and planting the oak trees that now provide shade for the entire property. In the back, we built a workshop where I still restore old electronics, pursuing the hobby that became my profession. The smell of cedar wood and solder flux in that workshop reminds me of the countless hours my boys spent learning to use tools, asking questions about how things work, discovering the satisfaction of fixing something that seemed broken beyond repair. Nina moved in with me after her parents died. She's incredibly bright, almost 16 now, with her father's curiosity and her mother's fierce determination. She spends hours on her computer, teaching herself programming languages and what she calls cybersecurity. Most of what she explains goes over my head, but I can see the passion in her eyes when she talks about her latest project. Joel visits every few weeks with his wife Tessa. They've been married for 8 years, though I sometimes wonder what attracted them to each other beyond a shared interest in living beyond their means. Joel makes decent money as an IT technician, around $60,000 a year, but Tessa has expensive tastes and a remarkable talent for finding ways to spend money they don't have. The trust fund was meant to give Nina every opportunity Daniel and Lisa had dreamed of for her. Full college tuition wherever she wanted to go, graduate school if she chose that path, maybe even a down payment on her first house someday. It was their way of making sure their daughter would never struggle financially the way they had in their early 20s. I managed the fund conservatively, the way Margaret had taught me to approach investments. Index funds for steady growth, some bonds for stability, a small portion in blue chip stocks for slightly higher returns. Nothing fancy or risky, but consistent progress toward our goal of having enough for any university in the country. The quarterly statements arrived like clockwork, and I reviewed them carefully every month. Watching Nina's fund grow gave me a sense of purpose, a way to honor Daniel and Lisa's memory while securing their daughter's future. That's why the transaction I discovered on the October statement hit me like a physical blow. I always reviewed the trust statements on the 15th of each month, a habit Margaret had insisted upon during our business years. October's statement arrived on a Tuesday. I was sitting in my workshop organizing receipts for my accountant and enjoying the familiar routine of paperwork. When I opened the envelope, the balance was wrong. Not slightly wrong, the kind of minor error that banks occasionally made. Devastatingly wrong. According to the statement, $45,000 had been withdrawn on September 28th. The notation read, "Emergency Educational Expense," authorized by Secondary Trustee J. Golding. I stared at the paper for a full minute, reading the line over and over, hoping the numbers would somehow rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Then I called the fund management company. The representative, a polite young woman named Sarah, confirmed what I was seeing. Joel had used his emergency access to make a withdrawal for advanced tuition payment to Nina's preparatory academy. "Can you tell me which academy received the payment?" I asked. There was a pause while Sarah checked her records. "I'm sorry, Mr. Golding, but the funds were transferred to Mr. Joel Golding's personal account for direct payment to the educational institution." That sent up every red flag I possessed. Educational institutions received payments directly from trust funds all the time. There was no reason for money to go through Joel's personal account unless something irregular was happening. But Nina attended Riverside Unified's public high school. I drove her there myself every morning, the same route Daniel had taken when he was a student. I called the school anyway, hoping there was some explanation I was missing. The registrar's office was helpful but confused. "Mr. Golding, Nina hasn't paid any special fees this year. In fact, her student account has a credit balance from last year's supply money that we haven't used yet." My hands were shaking when I hung up the phone. I walked to Nina's room and knocked gently, not wanting to alarm her, but needing to understand what was happening. "Grandpa, come in." She was at her desk, surrounded by 3 monitors, displaying lines of code I couldn't begin to understand. Nina could write computer programs that did things I didn't even know computers were capable of. At 15, she was already more technically sophisticated than most adults. "Nina, honey, did Joel talk to you about any special school expenses? Maybe tutoring or college preparation classes?" She swiveled around in her chair, her dark eyes immediately serious. Nina had inherited her father's ability to read people's emotions. She could tell when something was bothering me before I said a word. "No, Grandpa. Is something wrong with my college fund?" I sat on the edge of her bed, studying her face. Nina had been through so much loss in her young life that I hesitated to burden her with financial worries. But she deserved to know the truth about her own future. "Someone withdrew $45,000 from your fund last month. The bank says it was for educational expenses, but I can't figure out what expenses those might be." Nina's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not surprise, something else. Recognition, maybe. Let me guess, she said quietly. Uncle Joel used his emergency access. How did you know that? I've been monitoring my accounts, Grandpa. I set up alerts for any transactions over $1,000. I saw the withdrawal the day it happened. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why didn't you tell me? Nina looked at her computer screens, then back at me. I wanted to see what excuse he would give us first, and I wanted time to investigate something I suspected. Before I could ask what she meant, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at the screen, and her jaw tightened in a way that reminded me of her father when he was angry. Speak of the devil. Uncle Joel wants to come over for dinner Thursday. He says he has something important to discuss with both of us. That's when I started noticing details I had previously overlooked. The Tesla in Joel's driveway that hadn't been there 3 months ago. New model, probably $80,000. And Tessa had mentioned their vacation to Bermuda just last month, posting pictures from a resort that definitely wasn't budget-friendly. $45,000 would cover a luxury car down payment and an expensive vacation with money left over. But I was about to learn that Joel's theft was much worse than I imagined. Thursday evening came with unseasonable heat for October. Joel and Tessa arrived precisely at 6:30, bringing flowers and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Nina's monthly allowance. I watched them through my kitchen window as they walked up the driveway, noting how Joel's eyes darted around the property like he was cataloging assets for some future purpose. I had made my decision during the sleepless nights since discovering the missing money. If Joel was stealing from Nina's fund, I needed him to reveal the scope of his theft himself. The best way to do that was to appear vulnerable, confused, maybe even slightly incompetent with financial matters. It went against every instinct I had developed during 40 years of running a business. Margaret used to joke that I read financial statements like other people read novels, catching every detail, remembering every discrepancy. But tonight, I would play the role of an aging widower who might need help managing complicated money matters. "Dad, you look tired," Tessa said as they settled around my dining room table. She had that practiced concern voice that she used when she wanted something, the tone that suggested caring while maintaining emotional distance. "I have been feeling overwhelmed lately," I said, testing the waters. "All these investment statements and tax documents. Your mother always helped me understand these things." Joel leaned forward immediately like a predator sensing weakness. "Dad, you know I'd be happy to help you organize your finances. It's what I do for a living, more or less." "That's generous of you, son, but I wouldn't want to burden you with my problems." "It's no burden at all. Actually, I've been thinking you might benefit from working with a professional financial advisor. I've been using this guy named Keaton who's been absolutely fantastic. He specializes in helping people our age plan for the future." Our age. Joel was 35, but I let the comment slide. "Keaton has this investment opportunity that's only available for a limited time. It could double Nina's college fund in just 2 years. Nina, who had been quietly eating her dinner and observing the conversation, looked up sharply. "Double it? How?" "Cryptocurrency portfolio management," Joel said with the confidence of someone who had practiced this speech multiple times. "It's perfectly safe because it's diversified across multiple digital currencies. The returns are incredible right now." I watched Nina's face carefully. She was 16, but had developed the poker face of a seasoned negotiator during her years of loss and adaptation. "Isn't cryptocurrency really volatile, Uncle Joel? I've been reading about it for a computer science project. The articles I found said it can lose value very quickly." "That's old information, sweetheart. The technology has stabilized significantly. Besides, we're not talking about day trading or speculation. This is long-term strategic positioning in established digital assets." Tessa nodded enthusiastically, playing her supporting role. "Joel has already made $12,000 on our own investment in just 6 months. It's been amazing to watch." "What kind of returns are we talking about?" I asked, playing my role as the confused but interested elder. "Conservative estimate? 60% annually. But Keaton thinks we could see returns as high as 80% if the cryptocurrency market continues trending upward the way it has been." I had to work hard not to laugh out loud. Anyone promising 80% annual returns was either delusional or running a confidence scheme. But Joel seemed genuinely convinced of his own sales pitch, which made the situation even more troubling. How much would we need to invest to see those kinds of returns? Ideally, we'd want to move most of Nina's fund into this opportunity. Maybe keep $50,000 in traditional investments, just to be safe and conservative. But the bulk of it should be positioned for maximum growth potential. Nina set down her fork very carefully, the way she did when she was controlling her temper. "Uncle Joel, are you saying you want to gamble with my college money?" "It's not gambling, Nina. It's strategic investing based on careful market analysis. There's a big difference." Joel was lying with remarkable ease, maintaining eye contact, and speaking with apparent sincerity. But I had spent decades learning to read people in business negotiations, and every signal I was receiving said this investment opportunity was either non-existent or a cover story for money that was already gone. "Well," I said slowly, "I suppose if you really think it's the right move for Nina's future." "I do, Dad. Absolutely. And the sooner we act, the better. Keaton says this opportunity might not be available much longer." As they left that evening, I noticed Joel glance meaningfully at the framed photographs on my mantel. Pictures of the house, the property, Margaret and me at our retirement party. The way a man looks at things when he's calculating their value for some future transaction. That night, after they were gone, Nina knocked on my bedroom door. "Grandpa, we need to talk about Uncle Joel and my money. I think there's something you need to know." And Nina came into my room carrying her laptop and a manila folder thick with printed papers. She had that determined expression she got when she was about to explain something complicated and important. "I've been doing some investigating," she said, settling cross-legged on my bed, like she used to do when she was younger and wanted to tell me about her day. "Ever since that first withdrawal, I've been tracking Uncle Joel's digital footprint." "What kind of tracking?" "Social media posts, public records, financial breadcrumbs. It's amazing what people leave online when they're not thinking about digital privacy." She opened her laptop and showed me a series of screenshots she had compiled. Joel's Facebook page, filled with pictures of the new Tesla, the Bermuda vacation, and something that made my blood run cold. Photos from what looked like a casino, with Joel grinning next to a roulette table, holding what appeared to be a large stack of chips. These were posted 3 weeks ago from a casino in Las Vegas. Look at the timestamp. It was during his supposed business conference that he mentioned to you. "How much do you think he's taken, Nina?" She opened her folder and pulled out printed bank statements, transaction records, and handwritten analysis charts. Everything was meticulously organized, highlighted, and cross-referenced like a professional investigation. More than 45,000. Much more. I've been learning about financial forensics through online courses. There are patterns you can track if you know what to look for. The papers she showed me revealed a level of analysis that impressed and worried me. Nina had been essentially conducting her own criminal investigation, using skills I didn't even know she possessed. According to my research, Uncle Joel has been making unauthorized withdrawals for over 14 months. Small amounts at first, probably testing whether you'd notice or whether the bank would flag unusual activity. The total is closer to $180,000. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach and knocked all the air out of my lungs. 180,000? Maybe more. Some of the transactions are coded in ways that make them hard to track without subpoena power. But Grandpa, that's not the worst part. She pulled up another screen on her laptop, showing what looked like trading account interfaces. I've been monitoring his communications and online activity. He's not investing my college money in any legitimate opportunity. He's gambling with it and losing badly. How do you know that for certain? Nina looked at me with an expression that was much too mature for a 16-year-old. Because I hacked his cryptocurrency accounts. The matter-of-fact way she said it reminded me that Nina was not a typical teenager. She had been teaching herself advanced computer skills since she was 12 years old. What she couldn't learn from online courses and tutorials, she figured out through trial and error and sheer determination. "Nina, is that legal?" "Probably not, but neither is stealing from trust funds." She turned her laptop toward me again. "Look at this." The screen showed what looked like trading platforms, with Joel's name and account information displayed. The balance history was a roller coaster of dramatic gains, followed by devastating losses. But the overall trend was unmistakably downward, like watching someone's financial life spiral into destruction. He started with about $50,000 of my money last year, made some early wins that made him overconfident, then started betting bigger and bigger amounts. As of yesterday, he's down to $23,000 across all his cryptocurrency accounts. So he's lost most of your college money already. That's why he's getting desperate, and that's why he's pushing this investment opportunity story so hard. He needs access to the rest of my fund to try to win back what he's already lost. I studied the financial documents Nina had compiled. Her analysis was thorough, methodical, almost professional in its attention to detail and logical conclusions. How long have you known about this? I suspected something was wrong when the Tesla appeared. Uncle Joel makes about $60,000 a year. Tessa works retail part-time for maybe $15,000. They shouldn't be able to afford a luxury car and expensive vacations, not with their existing expenses. So I started paying attention to details. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Nina looked at me with eyes that seemed much older than 16. Eyes that had seen too much loss and disappointment for someone her age. Because I wanted to gather enough evidence to make sure he couldn't talk his way out of it or convince people we were mistaken. And because I wanted to see how far he'd go. She closed her laptop and gathered her papers into neat stacks. Grandpa, I think Uncle Joel is going to try to get legal control over my fund, maybe even over your assets. I heard him on the phone with someone last week talking about conservatorship and elderly care decisions. The word conservatorship hit me like a wave of ice water. In California, a conservatorship would give Joel legal authority over my financial decisions if he could somehow prove I was no longer mentally competent to manage my own affairs. Nina, I think it's time we turned the tables on your uncle, but I'm going to need your help. She smiled for the first time that evening, and for a moment she looked exactly like her father. I was hoping you'd say that. I already have a plan. Nina's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of confronting Joel directly about his theft, we would give him exactly what he seemed to want, an opportunity to take control of my finances. But we would document everything he did, creating an ironclad legal case while he dug his own grave deeper with each desperate move. The first step was hiring a forensic accountant. Nina had researched local specialists and found Margaret Rivers, a certified fraud examiner with 15 years of experience investigating financial crimes. Her reviews online were impressive, and her specialization in family financial abuse cases made her perfect for our situation. I called her office Friday morning explaining that I needed help investigating unauthorized trust fund transactions. Mr. Golding, I can certainly help you trace unauthorized trust transactions and build a case for recovery, but I need to warn you up front. When these cases involve family members, they can get emotionally complicated very quickly. I understand, but my granddaughter's future is at stake, and I can't let personal feelings compromise her education fund. Margaret came to my house that afternoon. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who spoke in precise, clipped sentences and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had seen every variety of financial deception. Nina presented her research like a doctoral candidate, defending a thesis, complete with charts, timelines, and supporting documentation. Impressive work, Margaret said after reviewing Nina's evidence carefully. You've identified the primary fraud pattern and documented it better than some professional investigators I've worked with. But we'll need to dig deeper to build a comprehensive case that will hold up in court. Margaret's initial professional analysis confirmed Nina's amateur investigation. Joel had stolen $178,000 over 14 months, always in amounts just under the threshold that would trigger automatic bank alerts or require additional authorization. More damning, he had forged my signature on 6 different withdrawal authorization forms, creating fake documentation to cover his theft. The good news, Margaret explained, is that this is a textbook case of trust violation and elder financial abuse. The bad news is that recovering the money will depend on whether there are any recoverable assets left or whether it's all been gambled away. What if most of the money is already gone? Then Mr. Joel Golding will face serious criminal charges. Trust theft over $25,000 is a felony in California. With the amounts we're talking about, he's looking at potential prison time and mandatory restitution. And Nina had been quiet during most of this conversation, but now she spoke up with a question that showed she had been thinking several steps ahead. Mrs. Rivers, what if Uncle Joel tries to claim that Grandpa gave him permission to take the money, or that Grandpa is mentally incompetent and doesn't understand what he authorized? That's actually the most likely defense strategy in cases like this, which is why we need to be proactive rather than reactive. Margaret explained the legal landscape we were facing. If Joel filed for conservatorship, claiming I was no longer mentally capable of managing my finances, he could potentially gain legal control over all my assets, not just Nina's trust fund. It was a common tactic in financial elder abuse cases. But we can use that against him if we're prepared, she said. If he files for conservatorship, he'll have to present evidence of your alleged incompetence to a judge. That creates an opportunity for us to present counter-evidence. What kind of counter-evidence? Independent psychological evaluations proving your mental competency. Financial literacy tests showing you understand complex transactions. Character witnesses who can testify to your decision-making abilities. And most importantly, documented proof that he's been stealing from the trust while claiming to act in your best interests. The plan began to take shape over the following hour. Nina would continue monitoring Joel's communications and financial activity using her technical skills. Margaret would compile a comprehensive forensic report that could be used in either criminal or civil proceedings, and I would play the role of a confused, aging widower who might be willing to grant Joel broader financial authority. The key, Margaret explained, is to let him escalate the situation himself. Don't confront him about the theft directly. Instead, make him think he's convincing you to give him more access to your assets. Let him present his conservatorship plan as his idea, something he's suggesting for your own good. Nina pulled out her phone and showed us additional evidence she had been gathering. I can help with that approach. I've already figured out how to access Uncle Joel's email and text messages through security vulnerabilities in his accounts. If he's planning legal action, I'll see it coming well in advance. Margaret raised an eyebrow at this revelation. I didn't hear that last comment, but hypothetically speaking, any evidence gathered through unauthorized access wouldn't be admissible in court proceedings. But it could tell us what he is planning so we can prepare our response, I said. Hypothetically, yes. Early warning systems can be very valuable in legal strategy. That evening, Nina set up what she called comprehensive digital surveillance. Whoa. She couldn't use anything she found through unauthorized means as direct evidence, but she could prepare us for Joel's next moves and help us anticipate his strategy. It was like having an early warning system for whatever desperate measures he might attempt. Grandpa, there's something else we should consider, Nina said as we finalized our plans. If Uncle Joel is desperate enough to steal from my college fund, he might be desperate enough to try more aggressive tactics to cover his tracks, such as forging additional documents, bribing officials to support his conservatorship claim, maybe even trying to have you declared mentally incompetent by paying off a corrupt doctor to write false medical reports. I thought about the calculating way Joel had looked at my house, my property, my financial statements during recent visits. Then we'd better be ready for whatever he tries next. Nina smiled with grim determination. We will be. Trust me on that. Our opportunity came sooner than expected. On Monday morning, I called Joel and mentioned, in what I hope sounded like casual conversation, that I was considering selling the house and moving into a smaller, more manageable place. Dad, that's a pretty big decision. Are you sure you're thinking clearly about all the implications? The way he phrased the question sent warning signals through my mind. I'm fine, Joel, but this house is too much for me to maintain alone, and if I sold it, I could put the proceeds into Nina's trust fund, really secure her future for whatever she wants to do. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, then, Dad, let me come over tonight. I think we need to have a serious conversation about your financial options and what you're considering. Joel arrived at 7 o'clock sharp without Tessa this time. He looked agitated, distracted, like someone who hadn't slept well in several days. His hand shook slightly as he accepted a cup of coffee, and I noticed he kept checking his phone for messages. Dad, I've been thinking about our conversation this morning, about you selling the house and making major financial decisions. I'm worried you might not be considering all the potential implications. What kind of implications? Tax consequences, for one thing, market timing issues, whether you're really thinking through the long-term effects of these decisions on your financial security. I played my part carefully, channeling the confusion I had observed in some of my elderly customers back when I ran the electronics business. You're probably right, son. These financial matters are getting more complicated than I feel comfortable handling alone. That's exactly what I'm concerned about, which is why I think you should seriously consider letting me help you more formally. Maybe signing some documents that would let me assist with major financial decisions, just as a safety net. What kind of documents are you talking about? Joel pulled out his phone and scrolled through what looked like search results he had prepared in advance. Well, there's something called a power of attorney. It would let me handle financial transactions if you ever needed assistance. And there's also something called conservatorship, which provides broader protection for people who might be having trouble with complex decisions. The way he said people who might be having trouble sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't a son concerned about his father's well-being. This was a criminal looking for legal cover for his theft. I don't know, Joel. That sounds like you'd have a lot of control over my personal affairs. Only if you needed it, Dad, and only to protect you from making decisions you might regret later. Think about it. You're talking about selling the family home, making major changes to Nina's trust fund. These are big decisions that could affect the rest of your life. After Joel left, Nina emerged from her room with her laptop and a small wireless recording device I hadn't even noticed she had placed in the living room earlier. Listen to this part, she said, playing back Joel's voice. People who might be having trouble with complex decisions. That's not how someone talks about a temporary power of attorney to help with paperwork, she continued. That's how someone talks about permanent legal control over another person's life. She opened her laptop and showed me transcripts of text messages between Joel and someone named Keaton. But these messages weren't about legitimate investment opportunities. They were about liquidating the old man's assets and moving fast before he changes his mind or talks to someone who might interfere. Keaton isn't a financial advisor, Grandpa. He's Uncle Joel's gambling buddy. Look at these conversations. The messages revealed a completely different picture than what Joel had presented to us. Joel owed significant money to people Keaton described as not very patient about repayment schedules. The Tesla and the Bermuda vacation weren't symbols of financial success. They were desperate attempts to maintain appearances while Joel spiraled deeper into debt and desperation. Uncle Joel owes at least $80,000 to various creditors, plus interest and penalties, plus what he's already stolen from my fund. He's not trying to invest my college money in cryptocurrency. He's trying to use it to pay off gambling debts before his creditors take more serious action. But the most damning message was the most recent one, sent just 2 hours after Joel left my house. The old man is talking about selling his property and putting the money into the kids' fund. We need to move now before he does something that puts the money out of reach. I'm filing the conservatorship papers tomorrow morning. Nina looked at me with grim satisfaction. Now we know his exact timeline, and we can be ready for whatever he tries. I studied the message transcripts, feeling a mixture of betrayal and strategic satisfaction. Joel was about to make the biggest mistake of his criminal career. Nina, how quickly can Margaret Rivers prepare our counter-evidence? She said she could have everything ready within 48 hours if she needed to work around the clock. Then call her tonight. Tell her Joel is filing for emergency conservatorship tomorrow. We need to be ready to respond immediately. Nina was already dialing Margaret's number. As she spoke to our forensic accountant, I walked to my workshop and breathed in the familiar smell of cedar and solder flux. Margaret used to say this workshop was where I did my best thinking, where I could work through complex problems with my hands while my mind processed solutions. Tonight, I was thinking about justice, about family loyalty, and about the difference between protecting someone and controlling them. Joel wanted to paint me as an incompetent old man who needed his protection. Instead, he was about to discover that some old men have very long memories, very detailed records, and very little patience for thieves who prey on children. The quiet war was about to begin in earnest. Margaret Rivers worked through the night. By Wednesday morning, she had prepared what she called the most comprehensive elder financial abuse case file I've assembled in my career. The evidence was devastating and methodical. Bank records showing Joel's forged signatures on withdrawal authorization forms. Timeline analyses proving direct correlations between his gambling activities and trust fund withdrawals. Digital forensics tracking Nina's college money from the trust account directly into Joel's cryptocurrency gambling accounts, and from there into online casino platforms. He's not just stealing, Margaret explained as we reviewed the documents in my kitchen. He's stealing and then immediately gambling away what he steals in increasingly desperate attempts to win back previous losses. It's a pattern completely consistent with severe gambling addiction and escalating criminal behavior. Nina had contributed her own technical evidence to Margaret's professional investigation. Though we couldn't use her unauthorized hacking discoveries directly in court, she had found ways to access publicly available information that painted a clear picture of Joel's financial desperation and deceptive behavior. "Look at this," she said, showing us a comprehensive court record search. Uncle Joel has 3 unpaid judgments against him from different creditors, credit card companies, and a payday loan service. Total of $47,000 in legal judgments he's been avoiding. Plus the estimated $80,000 he apparently owes to private creditors who don't use the court system, Margaret added. "Your son is in serious financial trouble, Mr. Golding, the kind of trouble that makes people do increasingly desperate things." What Nina discovered next was even more troubling. Joel had been researching conservatorship procedures online for months, not weeks. His browser history, which Nina had accessed through their shared family cloud account, showed searches for topics like elderly incompetence legal standards, how to get power of attorney for aging parent, and medical evidence needed for conservatorship. But the most chilling discovery was an email thread between Joel and someone calling himself Dr. Harrison Reed. Joel had contacted this supposed doctor about conducting a psychological evaluation of his father to establish medical necessity for conservatorship proceedings. "Grandpa, I think Uncle Joel is planning to pay a fake doctor to write a report saying you're mentally incompetent." Margaret's expression darkened as she reviewed the email evidence. That would constitute fraud on multiple levels: medical fraud, elder abuse, and perjury if he presents false medical testimony to a court. We're talking about serious felony charges. Can we stop him from doing this? Better than stopping him, we can catch him in the act and let him destroy his own case. Margaret explained the strategy she had developed. We would allow Joel to file his conservatorship petition and present whatever fraudulent evidence he had prepared. When he submitted fake medical reports to the court, we would be ready with independent evaluations proving my mental competency, along with comprehensive forensic evidence of his ongoing theft. The beauty of this approach, Margaret explained, is that Joel will commit additional crimes in the process of trying to cover up his original theft. Every false document he files, every fake medical report he submits, every fraudulent claim he makes adds to his eventual criminal liability. Nina had her own crucial role to play in our strategy. Using her advanced technical skills, she would document everything Joel did online, every email he sent, every financial transaction he attempted to hide. "I can't use this information directly as evidence in court," she said, "but I can make sure you're never surprised by what Uncle Joel does next. It's like having access to his playbook before he runs each play." Thursday morning brought the news we had been expecting. Joel filed his emergency conservatorship petition with Riverside County Superior Court. The documents claimed I was suffering from progressive cognitive decline and was no longer capable of making rational financial decisions without supervision. The supporting evidence included a psychological evaluation from Dr. Harrison Reed, stating that I exhibited significant memory loss, impaired judgment, and increasing confusion about financial matters that pose a danger to my long-term welfare. The problem with Joel's carefully planned fraud was that Dr. Reed had never examined me, never spoken to me, never even seen me. In fact, as Margaret discovered with a single phone call to the state medical board, Dr. Reed's medical license had been suspended 2 years earlier for falsifying patient records in an insurance fraud scheme. Your son just submitted fraudulent medical testimony to a superior court judge, Margaret said after hanging up the phone. In California, that's a felony that carries a potential sentence of up to 5 years in state prison. The court scheduled an emergency hearing for the following Wednesday. Joel's petition requested immediate temporary conservatorship, which would give him legal authority over all my financial decisions within a week if the judge approved his request. He's moving extremely fast because he's desperate and running out of time, Margaret observed. But speed is the enemy of careful planning. The faster he moves, the more mistakes he'll make. That evening, Nina intercepted another message from Joel to his gambling partner, Keaton. Everything's in motion. Should have legal access to the old man's accounts by next Friday. Then we can solve both our problems and get these creditors off our backs. I read the message twice, feeling something I hadn't experienced in many years. Not anger exactly, though there was certainly anger involved. Something colder and more focused. A sense of purpose that reminded me of the feeling I used to get when Margaret and I were solving particularly complex business problems. My son was planning to steal my life savings to pay gambling debts. He was willing to destroy my reputation, my independence, and my granddaughter's future for his own immediate gratification and financial convenience. But Joel had made one crucial error in his criminal planning. He had completely underestimated both his father and his niece. By next Friday, Joel would discover just how wrong he had been about that. Wednesday morning arrived gray and cold, typical October weather in Riverside County. I dressed in my best suit, the same one Margaret and I had worn to important business meetings when we were building precision electronics. Nina wore a simple black dress that made her look older and more serious than her 16 years. The Riverside County Superior Court building was deliberately imposing, all concrete and glass, designed to intimidate people who weren't accustomed to legal proceedings. Joel was already there when we arrived, sitting with a lawyer who looked like he specialized in quick, cheap legal solutions rather than careful preparation. I noticed Joel's hands shaking as he reviewed his documents. He kept glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Guilt mixed with determination, maybe, or desperation masquerading as confidence. Mr. Golding, a woman in a professional blue suit, approached our table. I'm Dr. Catherine Walsh, the court-appointed psychologist. Judge Martinez has asked me to conduct an independent evaluation of your cognitive function before today's hearing. Dr. Walsh was nothing like the fraudulent Dr. Reed that Joel had hired to support his case. She was credentials and competence personified, with 15 years of experience in forensic psychology and a reputation for thoroughness that both attorneys and judges respected. The evaluation took 45 minutes in a private conference room. Memory tests, reasoning puzzles, financial comprehension questions. I had prepared extensively with Margaret's help, but the preparation turned out to be unnecessary. My mind was as sharp as it had been 20 years ago, possibly sharper, given the focus that crisis brings. Mr. Golding, Dr. Walsh said as she finished her notes, I want you to know that your cognitive function scores in the 96th percentile for your age group. You show absolutely no signs of cognitive decline, impaired judgment, or confusion about financial matters. Judge Martinez was a stern-looking woman in her 50s who had clearly seen every variety of family financial drama during her years on the bench. She reviewed Joel's petition with careful attention, then looked skeptically at Dr. Reed's supposed psychological evaluation. Mr. Joel Golding, can you tell me when Dr. Reed examined your father? Joel's lawyer whispered something urgently in his ear. Your Honor, my client believes the examination took place approximately 2 weeks ago at Dr. Reed's office. I see, Dr. Walsh. When did you examine Mr. Lawrence Golding? This morning, Your Honor, and I should note for the record that Mr. Golding shows no signs whatsoever of the cognitive impairment described in Dr. Reed's report. Judge Martinez's expression hardened noticeably. Bailiff, please ask Dr. Reed to step forward to address some questions about his evaluation. There was a long, uncomfortable pause. Joel's lawyer stood up slowly. Your Honor, Dr. Reed was unable to attend today's hearing due to what he described as a medical emergency. How convenient for Dr. Reed. Judge Martinez turned to her clerk. Please make a note that the court will be conducting a thorough investigation of Dr. Reed's credentials and current licensing status. Margaret Rivers stood up at our table with the confidence of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Your Honor, we would like to present evidence that we believe is directly relevant to this conservatorship petition. Proceed, Ms. Rivers. What followed was the most methodical legal destruction I had ever witnessed. Margaret presented bank records showing Joel's forged signatures on multiple withdrawal authorization forms, timeline analyses proving direct correlations between his gambling activities and trust fund withdrawals, digital evidence tracing Nina's college money from the legitimate trust account directly into Joel's personal cryptocurrency gambling accounts. Your Honor, Mr. Joel Golding has systematically stolen approximately $178,000 from his 16-year-old niece's educational trust fund over the past 14 months. He is now attempting to gain conservatorship over his father's assets, presumably to continue and expand this pattern of financial abuse. Judge Martinez studied the evidence with increasing displeasure and what appeared to be growing anger. Ms. Rivers, are you alleging that this entire conservatorship petition is fraudulent? Yes, Your Honor. We believe Mr. Joel Golding is using false medical evidence and completely fabricated claims of cognitive decline to gain legal control over assets he intends to steal. Then Nina stepped forward to address the court. At 16, she needed special judicial permission to speak directly to a judge, but Judge Martinez granted it after reviewing Nina's written request and Margaret's explanation of her role. Your Honor, my name is Nina Golding. I am the beneficiary of the trust fund my uncle has been stealing from. Her voice was steady, clear, and surprisingly mature for someone her age. I have been monitoring and documenting the unauthorized withdrawals for over a year. I have compiled digital evidence showing that my uncle used my college money to gamble on cryptocurrency platforms and online casino websites. He has lost nearly all of it, trying to win back previous losses. With the court's permission, Nina opened her laptop and displayed her comprehensive forensic analysis on the courtroom's presentation screen. Bank transfers, gambling site transaction records, a detailed timeline that made Joel's theft impossible to deny or minimize. My uncle is not trying to protect my grandfather from bad financial decisions. He is trying to steal from both of us to pay his gambling debts. Judge Martinez looked at Joel with unconcealed disgust. Mr. Joel Golding, I am denying your conservatorship petition in its entirety. Furthermore, I am ordering an immediate freeze on all accounts you have accessed using your emergency trustee authority. But Judge Martinez wasn't finished delivering consequences. Bailiff, please contact the district attorney's office immediately. Based on the evidence presented in my courtroom today, I believe multiple criminal charges may be appropriate in this matter. Joel's face went white as he realized the full scope of what had just happened. In trying to steal everything from his family, he had instead lost everything himself. The aftermath moved with the swift efficiency of a legal system that had seen clear evidence of serious crimes. The district attorney filed criminal charges against Joel within a week: elder financial abuse, trust fund theft, forgery, and fraud. The fake Dr. Harrison Reed was also charged with impersonating a medical professional and submitting false testimony to a court. Joel's public defender advised him to accept a plea bargain rather than risk the much longer sentence he would face if convicted at trial. He would serve 18 months in minimum security prison, followed by 3 years of probation with strict financial monitoring. He was also required to liquidate all his assets to begin repaying the money he had stolen. The Tesla was sold at auction. Their house went into foreclosure when Joel could no longer make payments. Tessa filed for divorce before Joel's sentencing hearing, claiming she had been completely unaware of his criminal activities. Nina and I both doubted that claim, but we had no direct evidence of Tessa's involvement in the theft. The most satisfying part of the recovery process was watching Margaret Rivers and her team of forensic specialists track down Joel's hidden and concealed assets. He had tried to hide money in cryptocurrency accounts under false names, establish offshore banking relationships, and even maintain a safe deposit box registered under a fake identity. But digital money leaves digital traces that trained investigators can follow, and Margaret Rivers was relentless and methodical in following those traces wherever they led. We recovered $238,000, she told us 6 months after the trial concluded. Actually more than what he originally stole, because some of his early cryptocurrency investments gained value significantly before he gambled away the profits in his later desperate attempts. Nina's trust fund was restored to its full original amount, plus accumulated interest and investment gains from the recovered money. But more importantly for her future, the experience had taught her practical skills that no college program could have provided. She had learned digital forensics, legal research, financial analysis, and criminal investigation techniques at a level that impressed even the professionals who worked on our case. "Grandpa, I've been thinking about changing my college major plans," she told me one evening as we worked together in my workshop. She was helping me restore a 1960s oscilloscope, her small hands more precise and steady with delicate electronics than my arthritic fingers had become. From computer science to what? Forensic accounting, maybe? Or cybersecurity with a specific focus on financial crimes and elder abuse. I want to help other families who go through what we experienced. I watched her carefully align a complex circuit board, her dark eyes focused and determined in a way that reminded me of her father when he was working on something important to him. "You'd be excellent at that kind of work. You have the right combination of technical skill, analytical thinking, and moral clarity. I learned a lot from watching how you handled Uncle Joel, how you stayed calm and patient, gathered evidence methodically, and let him convict himself with his own actions instead of trying to fight him directly. I learned that approach from your grandmother. She used to say that the best revenge against people who try to hurt you is simply letting them face the natural consequences of their own choices." Nina smiled with satisfaction. "Reclamation, not rage. Exactly right. The legal proceedings had taken nearly a full year to resolve completely, but the outcome exceeded our most optimistic hopes. Joel served his full sentence and was released to a halfway house in Los Angeles, where he worked in a computer repair shop for minimum wage while paying restitution. His gambling addiction had ultimately cost him his freedom, his marriage, his relationship with his family, and any realistic hope of financial recovery during his remaining productive years. But the real victory was securing Nina's future opportunities, with her trust fund completely restored and her college plans back on track. She received early admission to MIT's prestigious cybersecurity program. Her application essay described her experience investigating and documenting financial fraud, and the admissions committee was so impressed they offered her a full academic scholarship on top of her existing trust fund. "You know what the best part is, Grandpa?" Nina said as she packed her belongings for college. "I'm going to use the skills I learned catching Uncle Joel to protect other people from criminals like him." I helped her load her car with computers, textbooks, and the few personal items she wanted to take with her to Massachusetts. As we worked together, I thought about Daniel and Lisa, and how incredibly proud they would have been of their daughter's strength, intelligence, and moral character. "Nina, before you leave for college, I want you to know something important. What happened with Joel was terrible and painful for our family, but it also revealed who you really are underneath. You're not just intelligent or technically skilled, you're principled. You use your abilities to protect people and pursue justice, not to take advantage of others." She hugged me tightly. "I learned that from watching you, Grandpa." As I watched her drive away toward her future, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete confidence that the next generation would be better, stronger, and more ethical than the one before it. Joel had tried to steal Nina's future to fund his own immediate gratification and selfish desires. Instead, his criminal behavior had revealed Nina's true character and given her invaluable skills she never would have developed otherwise. Sometimes justice works in unexpected ways. Sometimes the people who try to destroy us end up creating the very strength and determination we need to build something better than what existed before. That evening, I sat in my workshop among the familiar smells of cedar and solder, thinking about family, loyalty, trust, and the crucial difference between taking what you want and earning what you deserve. Joel had wanted everything without earning anything or considering the consequences. Nina had earned everything by protecting what mattered most and standing up for what was right. The quiet war was over, and the right side had won completely. If you know someone who's dealing with financial abuse from family members, share this story with them. Sometimes the best protection's knowing that you're not alone in facing these challenges, and that justice is possible when you gather the right evidence and trust the right people to help you. The truth has a way of revealing itself when you're patient enough to let it happen.